Welcome, everybody, to MarkWHO77. Oh, we have a great show for you today. My name is Mark Baumgarten, and with me are Vicky Jakubowski and Ben Cullis. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Boy,
Howdy.
we've got a great show today, don't we?
Oh, yes.
This is one of my bucket list shows. I've had a few shows so far. This is one of my, this is, we get to interview someone I've always wanted to talk to. I really have. He's done amazing things in the world of British comics, starting with DC Thompson, moving to Fleetway and IPC and whatever. Why don't you introduce him, Ben?
I've been reading his comics ever since I was knee high to a grasshopper, including the very famous action comic. He basically helped start 2000 AD, which has since become the galaxy's greatest
Yep,
comic.
it is.
One of my favorite anti-hero stories is Martial Law, so it's no other than Pat Mills.
All right. Well, let's bring Pat on. Welcome, Pat Mills. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Mark.
Hi. It's amazing that you're here. I've been wanting to meet you for so many years. You've written so many great comics. You wrote Doctor Who. We have a Mark Who 77. That's my show was originally a Doctor Who show, so we had a little talk about that. Um, but we want to start the show off because we start the show off every time with one question. We start off with the hardest question. That way, it all goes downhill. Well, it doesn't go downhill, but it's all easier. Does that sound good?
Okay.
All right.
Go for it.
This is
I'm
the
wondering
hardest
what.
question. The
Okay.
hardest question. Who is Pat Mills? Isn't that hard? It's a hard question.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, from a career point of view, I'm a comic writer and a writer of popular culture,
Hmm.
and I think my work is pretty much known for having a strong subtext. In other words, I have axes to grind, and not just in Spain, but in other stories as well. Yeah. Okay, how's that?
That works for me. That works for me. Um, what is, without going into too much detail, what was your background? How did you get started writing? What was the passion? How did that come? The muse, should I bring up?
Well, I certainly wanted to be a writer from the age of 9.
Hmm.
The reason I can recall that was I remember being jealous because there was a girl of 8 who got a book published, and I thought, shit, I'm running out of time. I've got to get going. So I know from that point, I think I had my first story rejected by BBC Radio at the age of 10. So I've been at this a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Part of the reason we're doing this is to talk about SHA and bringing it to 77 Publishing.
It's a French book. It's a French
Hmm.
classic. And for various reasons, there's never been an English language edition apart from briefly with Heavy Metal when so long ago now. But apart from that, it's never appeared. And it's the predecessor, it's the lead up, if you like, to Requiem Vampire Knight.
Which I love. Which I love.
Which is, and as you'll doubtless know, is a 12-volume best-selling series. So SHA is really where it all began. And there's a lot of amazing ideas in SHA. And so therefore, I think we didn't have the knowledge, the expertise, working with the 77 to do a Kickstarter before. It just seemed too daunting. And my wife Lisa, who is the publishing side, she's doing a great job, but there's certainly no shortcuts on it. And I think subscribers to the Kickstarter certainly get value for money. I mean, it's a beautiful series. It's 3 volumes, and the Kickstarter is for the first volume, and the other two volumes will follow shortly thereafter.
Where can they do this Kickstarter? Where's this going to be?
Well, it will be advertised on social media.
Mm-hmm.
And it will literally be, with Kickstarter links, and it will also obviously be advertised on my websites, Millsverse, and so forth, and with the 77.
Ben, do we know any of the perks? Do we know what's coming with it?
Yeah, we've got some details of some of the rewards available on the Kickstarter. And as always, we have with 77, we do a launch show, and Pat is going to be there as well. And we're going to have an opportunity to reveal exclusively the extra special rewards that we've got. So I've got them listed here. We've got, as well as the deluxe edition book and a standard edition book, collecting SHA Volume 1. Pat has kindly got together some amazing rewards. So we've got facsimile editions of the scripts, Pat, and you've signed these. So yeah, absolutely. We've got art prints signed by, look at this.
Ooh, I love that. That's beautiful.
Character design. I mean, you got them in front of you, Pat. Maybe you just like to discuss one or two of those.
Well, they're going to be spread over the 3 volumes, so I can't say exactly which ones here, or rather, I can point to a few. But you get the general feeling that we picked out the best ones, the ones that we felt would appeal to the readers the most. Of these prints, because I think how they came about really was, I think Olivier wanted to design all the kind of key details. So this is a character who, for example, appears in Volume 1. And so it's very much Olivier's style to design the most important people for the story, and so he's got that basis going forward, and I fully subscribe to that. That's this is one that perhaps I think it might be appearing in one of the later. Obviously, you can see it's influenced by, is it Nighthawks? That wonderful painting of lonely people at night. Again, you can see some of the designs, and we're including the most relevant to Volume 1, and I think, this chap, for example, there's a print of him. He's one of the. This is Big Max, who, as you can imagine, is a serious villain. I think on Volume 2, we'll be featuring some of these spaceships. And let's see, what else we've got here. And I think we may have.
Ooh, I like that.
It's an astonishing city, isn't it? This is really where my sort of partnership with Olivier began, and so we will have a number of really cool prints signed by Olivier to go with Volume 1, and then more with Volume 2 and Volume 3.
And while those would be potentially available in runs determined by potentially how many backers go for them, although they still will be limited edition prints, I take it you have a very limited special offer with regards to a perpetual calendar?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we've only got 8 of them. So now this is a Requiem print, a Requiem calendar, rather. And there's only 8 of them. So they will be, I think you call them early birds. You know, in other words, first come, first served. how's the position on that?
It's
Is that
perfect.
right?
Perfect shot. Perfect shot. They look
Okay.
so nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, this is the thing that um, it's apart from anything else, it's bringing Olivia across to
Hmm.
a British American audience, because Requiem is known in the UK and US, but not as well known as it should. I mean, this is a guy who, Angoulême earlier this year, he had nearly 10,000 visitors to a Requiem gallery. And that
Wow.
gives you an idea of just how, how many fans he has in France. And the thing about it is, it has a British appeal, obviously, because he thinks somewhat Anglo-American,
Hmm.
so because he's working with me. So it's not so much a French project as an Anglo-French project.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very cool.
And I mentioned as well the deluxe standard. I'm working with yourself and Lisa at the moment, which is phenomenal. And we're obviously going in depth about talking about paper quality, printing techniques, the additional parts that are going to come with the book, the ribbons that's going to be with it, the styling of the cover. I mean, this is something that you're really, I don't necessarily say you're enjoying this aspect of it, or are you really kind of like enjoying the fact that you want to make this book and have it absolutely as a great edition?
Yes. Now, I mean, the only available image I have at the moment is a promotional one. This one is the deluxe, and the one behind it is the regular hardback. Now, with the deluxe, how does Lisa phrase it? I think she calls it a let's have a look. Foil detail. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh,
There's foil detail on there. And also that's on the cover, and it's and then on the actual book underneath, there's foil detail. And we're literally waiting for our proof copy to arrive, which should be hopefully in the next few days. But yeah, she put a lot of thought into that. And I think what we wanted with it, it's exclusive to the Kickstarter. So whereas the regular edition will be ongoing, this one, this deluxe edition is unique to the Kickstarter, and that's it. So it makes it, I think, a real collector's item. With all the bells and whistles with it.
Yeah, and I know we have an idea of how many people have already registered their interest in the Kickstarter. I mean, these are numbers which are very, very, very impressive, but I think worthy with regards to, the subject matter and the authors and the organization behind it and the reputation that you have as well, Pat. And I think what you're doing, which is really unique, is you're giving an opportunity to, I think, a couple of backers to actually go through and discuss. You've got one of the Kickstarters is called, and I'll give you a chance to say what they are. Fix Your Script with Pat Mills. How do you?
I love that.
I mean,
that is awesome.
are we going to give us some detail on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, often people at conventions and things really want to sort of talk about story, a story they have with me and so on. And as we all know, conventions these days are quite difficult for that sort of thing to really pull together, because you can't really devote that much time. You just can't, because you're signing copies and so on. So this is something other. It's where someone really wants some one-to-one input. For example, if they send me the manuscript, and I'll read an appropriate section of it and then talk it over with them, or they may be at an earlier stage where they have a great idea and they want to take it forward, and it's like, how do you do that? And I think we kept the price quite reasonable on that one. And so therefore, yeah, it might be oversubscribed. I think we've limited it to something like what is it? Three of each, I think.
Yeah,
Because
and the other one was the
how it would work. I mean, often we writers can be incredibly shy sometimes. I think, oh no, I'm not gonna, I can't talk about it. But of course, in this day and age, that's not possible. You know, in the age of social media and so on, the writer's got to get out there and push their material. And so those days of writers saying, oh yeah, I can just be a hermit in my cave, forget it. They've long gone. And,
yeah, that doesn't exist anymore.
No.
It doesn't, but it used to. It used to.
Yes.
Yeah.
I caught the tail end of that period. I quite enjoyed my hermit years. But yeah, they've long gone. So there'll be people who really want that kind of one-to-one. I mean, you know, on a lot of things that I do, I often go one-to-one if I can, like yoga, for example. If I really want to develop a particular yoga ability, I'll go one-to-one because, you know, if you're one of a class of 30 or something, you're not going to get that. So we'll give it a shot and see how that works out.
Brilliant. And just as some add-ons, I think you're very fortunate in the position. Obviously, Pat, we know you produced and published a lot of books.
Yeah.
You've also got stock, which will be signed copies, Kiss My Axe, for example, and other books from your back catalogue available. I think people can add them on, and we're talking through that at the moment. I can see on the Kickstarter here saying Kiss My Axe. We've got are there other books as well going on that, Pat? Because I have
signed copies of Kiss My Axe.
Yeah.
There's just copies of Be Pure, Be Vigilant, Behave. Copies of the Spacewalk Punks edition. And just to come back to the Fix Your Script, the other one with it as well, for those who are interested in the, what should we say, the esoteric side of SHA. What we've written down here is spend an hour on a video call with Pat exploring the magic of SHA and the magic of the muse. SHA was inspired by Pat's personal experiences. So if you're interested in the power of reincarnation and past lives and so forth to harness your inner creativity, this is for you. Now, that one actually, again, I think we had to limit it to, I think we limited it to 3 just to see how it would work. But I originally, when SHA first came out in France, I was giving talks at what was called the Psychic Questing Conference in London at Conway Hall, and because it was really quite powerful, quite emotional, and I eventually stopped, I think, because it sounds a bit strange, but I didn't want the talks to become too polished, because it was actually about real events, real people. And if you repeat these things time after time, in other words, people said, well, that talk went down well, you've got a big audience there. Do you want to come back and do it again next year? And I stopped because it was about real people, and I didn't want to be too polished, because some of the things are quite tragic. But I think after this break in time and so forth, and there will be people possibly from that era in the 90s, or people who are, I don't know, students of esoteric subjects like reincarnation, who might want to talk about it. And it is a subject I went into in great detail, but of course it's not for everyone. You know, it's like incarnation. A lot of people, who cares? You know, whatever.
You know what I noticed? There are 3 of us on a video call with you, Pat. How much do we owe? We got one of the perks.
Oh yeah, no,
Vicky's
Vicky's making her list right now. Ben will tell you that I have a problem with these Kickstarters. I have a tendency to buy art.
She does.
I love signed copies of books. As you can see, I have an entire wall here. I actually have a whole wall over there that is nothing but signed pictures and prints from artists and people I've met at cons over the years. And it just, the list I have for yours right now is way too long. It's a good thing I canceled that holiday in December. I think I might be able to afford this now. I might be okay.
I'm very happy that you've come to 77 Publishing. I
Oh
was able
God,
to
yes.
read. I was able to read issue one and the first volume, and it was amazing. I um, really think this is going to do well. Vicky, why don't you take the next question?
Oh, there you go.
Um,
Segue.
well, it's a
Um,
segue. It's a segue. You know, it's like riding one of those segways down the. Never mind. I don't know. Is that why they
yeah, we're
call
not
them
going to do
segways?
that.
No, no.
No, we're not going to do that.
Okay.
Well, actually, so much of your work, Pat, clearly has these gorgeous social undertones. Some of them are very obvious, and some of them are beautifully interwoven in your stories. I, did you plan on being an activist, or was it just Pat coming through in your stories?
I didn't plan on it, no. I think, as you say, it's Pat coming through in the stories. And I talk about it in Page Turners, my latest book, which is about the power of the muse.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm.
I've been reading it. Yeah.
I mean, we're all driven by the muse in some way or another. And if we go on a different path, chances are you're not going to be happy or that door's going to close in your face. But if you follow what you're meant to do, you know, it can be accountancy, it can be art, music, whatever. But getting in touch with it, I think, is quite important. And it's not something that I think is encouraged in creative writing that I'm aware of. But I mean, the concept of the muse goes back to Greek mythology and probably much earlier than that. You have the different muses. And the idea of being driven by some things, we live in a very clinical sort of world, so it's more like, well, this is the way to do it. And of course, you have at the same time the difficulty that you want to follow your muse, but you also want to be commercially successful. And the two do not necessarily reconcile. So it's more obvious with artists, where editors encourage them to draw in a particular style that will reach an audience, and to a degree that's also true with writers. But if you don't follow your muse, the chances are you're not going to be very happy. And it's the first thing that I would say when young writers say to me, got any tips? And the first thing I'll say to them is, why do you want to write? And
Yes.
Don't say, well, it's a cool job, or it's better than a real job, or
it's a hard job,
or I've always, I've grown up reading comics, and so that's why I've always wanted to do it. That's not really an answer. Why do you personally want to do it? And the answer is that if you're serious about it, that the muse has driven you to do it.
Yeah.
And the muse has driven you for a particular reason. And I'm always rather envious of some of the gentle muses of some writers, novelists that come to mind. P.G. Wodehouse, for example, who writes Cheats. How wonderful to just write light comedy, which makes people feel better.
Yeah.
So that's his muse. That's what was driving him. He wanted to make these very gentle comments on social politics and so forth. But my muse is a harsh mistress, as they say.
I would bet. I would bet.
So, she wants a bit more out of me than just gentle social.
She's taking a pint of blood from you.
They're hard stories, making hard points, and sometimes, as as my readers will well know, sometimes they have to be quite subversive to actually get past a very, what would you say, establishment, old school,
Yeah.
traditional publishing base. It's tough.
Can I ask Pat a question?
Yes.
Okay, Pat. I've never done the geeky fanboy thing. I'm not about to start, right? But I do know in publishing that you got to separate fiction and fact, and if you can make it fiction, you can't be sued for it, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
So have you never met any heroes? Because martial law seems to be very much. I think Pat. I think you are martial. You pray. You do pray for your enemies. You pray they go to hell.
Yeah. You haven't found any heroes yet. Okay.
Not in the world of martial law.
No.
But in the world of Charlie's War, and that's always the premise that I always pursue. You read about these ordinary kids, 16, 17, 18, 20, going off to war and and some surviving and some not. And to me, those people are real heroes. And I have tried to pursue that particular theme elsewhere, but it's very hard to really get publishers interested in the idea of, well, ordinary people just struggling through a day. I'm not saying that, someone with some adversity, some disability, or whatever it is. And there are ways to make those stories heroic and dramatic. And I came close to getting something like that away just a few years ago. And I don't think the advertising agency that were commissioning me were really that serious about it. But it was a great shame because I really saw the potential in just ordinary people's stories. Ordinary lives are absolutely fascinating because none of us are ordinary. We're all weird in different ways.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And by comparison, there's martial law, looking at all these guys in their colourful paints. And as he says, what a carnival of empty, sort of just emptiness.
I had the complete reverse, Pat, on the Carnival Empty and I know we discussed what we were doing over the summer. I said to Pat, he knows, I went to MarkWHO, it was during the First World War. It was on the front line and it changed 6 times. Okay. So it was very famous for the taxis going out of Paris, taking the troops to Paris and bringing back refugees from the town. It's also the site of, I think it's the largest museum to the First World War in Europe. I might be wrong. Musée de Gare de Mons.
Oh, yeah.
Now the point being here is, and obviously I look for books. I can go to an amazing shop in Belgium, Spain, France. They know how to run bookshops which sell graphic novels and comics, and it puts ours to a shame now. It really does in the UK. I don't know what the state of it is in the States.
It's a little sad.
They are closing so quickly in this country.
Yeah.
But when I went to MarkWHO, not only in the bookstore, I could completely converse, and my French is terrible. I converse completely using Pat Mills to the book owner, who I think actually. And there is Charlie's War, pride of place, absolutely pride of place, the large format version. But then I go to the museum, and in the educational section of the museum is Charlie's War. Wow.
That's just so wonderful to know. Yeah. And I have to add a footnote to that story, which is simply because I love stories. I mean, obviously, I've visited them in MarkWHO, and that is that all those wonderful, I say wonderful, all those terrible artifacts that comprise the museum, the machine guns and so on, were all collected together by someone, say, contemporary with myself and so forth. And he would spend every weekend going through the old trenches and digging up all these old artifacts. And they provided the basis for the realism of Jacques Tardy, who is the French equivalent of Joe Cahoon. And so this museum has a strong comic connection there as well, because I mean, Tardy is his artwork is wonderful. I mean, it's a very strong. I mean, both Joe Cahoon on Charlie's War and Tardy are both equally brilliant. But there's that whole comic connection with this guy spending. So Tardy would ring him up and say, I need to draw a particular Maxim machine gun. And the guy would say, oh, okay, I'll put it in the car and bring it round to you.
Oh, jeez.
So, but it's an astonishing museum. And it's what's also always makes me sad is the French have so much respect for not just the Charlie's War, but for bande dessinée, for comic books generally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But by comparison, the Imperial War Museum, not interested at all. I mean, I've done one talk at the Imperial War Museum quite a few years ago, and that was really when someone twisted their arm. But that snobbishness, that elitism,
Yeah.
no, they weren't interested. But the French, that their love of comic books is so incredible. And of course, that's, again, it takes us back to, where is it? Yeah, to SHA. You know, there's so much affection that goes into this work. I mean, British artists, American artists, they're equally talented, but the French system can on occasion allow artists and writers to blossom in a way that I think is quite tough for us in the UK, certainly, which is a great shame. I mean, you've got a golden age of American artists, very influenced by like Richard Corbin and so forth, who really go back to that French era, and Barry Windsor Smith and so forth.
Are you talking about the Métier Là period, that sort of the 73 onwards sort of thing?
Yeah, those, well, I mean, when I came in with 2000 AD, I was looking around for inspiration, and I was looking at people like Mike Kaluta, Barry Windsor Smith, but in particular, Metal Hurlon. And of course, it's an American equivalent, heavy metal. And which at that time had a very strong European quality.
Yes.
And, it was just brilliant work. And so many of those artists, I don't know, they've been directed into the superhero machine, I think. And sometimes they can make it work and provide great work, you know. Like
and if I may, Pat, if I may, just then, as someone who was contemporary to buying a comic because I was of that age, I only within 5 years was introduced by a wonderful comic shop owner in Bristol, for Forever People, a brilliant shop he ran. He said, you need to come downstairs and look at this stuff here, which was the American Independence, the Underground, and Metal Hurlon. But that 2000 AD experience for me was akin to being shown more of a European type of comic. That's what I'm thinking. I know it was classic British, but looking back at the artists that were, and you were pretty close to working with these people, and probably, I don't know how much involvement you had in terms of signing the Ortiz and the Solars, and but you know, you worked and pretty much wrote with them during Action period as well. I mean, was that a thing? It was just literally because they were the European agents, or was there a actual, we want these people because of the way they work and what they produce?
Well, essentially, ultimately, it was the latter. But there's a sad explanation for this, or it's a bit bittersweet, if you like, that in Spain, the exchange rate of the peseta against the pound meant that it was very good for Spanish artists to work for Britain. And so they were often looking for British comics that had very little status internationally, but the money was incredible. So you had an artist like, for example, Esteban Maroto, who was based in Spain, and he was doing some work for a comic that I began work on called Romeo, which was a very down market pulp romantic comic, but he produced such beautiful work with the writer. He produced an anti-war story called The Private War of Nicola Brown, and it was just breathtaking. So there it is in this down market comic, which would normally be ignored by aficionados and so forth. And that was true for a lot of Spanish artists and Italian as well. Once again, the lira, the exchange rate against the pound, meant that the publishers would say to us, go for these Spanish artists, go for these Italian artists. And often on occasion, to the detriment of what you might call British artists. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know the full story of that. But I think, for example, artists like Barry Windsor Smith may have found it easier to go to the States and become established there rather than finding his niche in Britain. And it was relatively difficult for British artists to get established. And so that's why at the beginning of 2000 AD, there's often, if not the majority, are Spanish or Italian or the odd South American artists, because that we were following the edicts of the publisher. But of course, we had our own taste and our own choices. So when I saw Dave Gibbons' work, I think, Christ, this is brilliant, right? Let's sign him up.
His first work in 2000. Are you talking about 2000 AD or prior to that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, in the case of Dave Gibbons, it was first experience was 2000 AD. The
Harlem Heroes.
He worked, I think, for DC Thompson's. Right. But he was looking for a breakout story, if you like. And 2000 AD came along at the right time. Yeah. And similarly, Brian Bolland, it was obvious Brian was going to be a huge talent, but he was still at the beginning of that process. And it often takes a year or so for people to find out exactly who they are and what they want to draw. And so I think Brian was at that very early stage. So it was very exciting. And I often come across, I say often, occasionally I come across similar people today, and I think I have to try and help them. So, I have to try and push them forward because I'm getting the same vibe from looking at their work that I did looking at Dave Gibbons or Brian Bolland's work. But I don't have the same clout today. So I might say to the 2000 AD editor, why don't you use this lady? She's brilliant. And you just get. So, it's tough.
And I'm not in the same category at all, but you do appreciate, Pat, I do publish comics. And, they're not selling in numbers that we wish that they would. But, in the 5 years work I've had with the 77 publishing, it's been astonishing to sort of like realize that as soon as you start doing something with the people you started with, there's a whole bunch of other people who are buying it and reading it, and they're in touch. And then you start appraising and you start building on that stuff. And I would say there's been, because there aren't that many titles in this country at the moment. I'm talking about the UK. By numbers of titles, we publish a significant tranche of that, not by significant sales. And I can tell you there are just, and you yourself, when you were obviously scouting for talent for Space Warp, and we were producing the 77 at the same time, we were in conversation about various people, and some worked for us, and you've kept some on a roster and stuff. I've got to say, I mean, it's not that there's a diminished number of talented people, but it is a shocking shame at the moment that the opportunities and the avenues for them to be able to get their work paid for, that's the important point. I mean, free work's great, but it doesn't help that person establish themselves as in a professional sense. It's do you think it's going one way, or do you think there's a glimmer of a hope that the work that I do and other people are trying to do and what you're trying to do now, it's not just sustaining, that we can build, or is it a different environment and you'd have a different perspective on it?
Well, I've always been an optimist. I think you've got to be in comics, otherwise you give up. I think it is, these things are making a difference. The Kickstarters, for example, which you're very expert in, and I'm just sort of coming along now to get into. And I think that they make a difference. I think yourself, myself, and there's various other people we're all trying to encourage talent and so forth. I think it can be brought back. It is very, very challenging because, I mean, apart from anything else, you've got this golden age legacy on 2000 AD, where some really brilliant work, Dave Gibbons, Brian Bolland, and so forth, right? And to encourage a new artist or a new writer to produce work of that quality is tough. But I really think it can be done. I think there are enough enthusiasts out there. And I think one of the things I do is by writing these nonfiction books about how it's done, particularly page turners, so that there are people out there who can see how to do it. And I suppose it's almost like the muse has taken a different turn. It's possibly some of it has moved towards graphic novels. So you have that one about a gay teenagers. I've forgotten the name, but I mean that would have. I mean that's
Love and Rockets.
What's it called?
Love and Rockets.
No, the recent one, Channel 4. It's a love story, really. Something like it's not called Gay Love. I can't for the life of me think offhand what it's called. But it was I think a best-selling graphic novel, and it went on to be a TV drama series. And I think some of these things may actually move towards graphic novels. And I think already there's lots of things that have been graphic novels that have gone on to make films and TV. So that's one road. Of course, the one that I particularly love is probably the hardest of all. I don't know, which is the newsstand. The newsstand audience I absolutely adore, because they're not comic fans. They're just ordinary kids or ordinary adults, and they walk past the newsstand and they think, hey, what's that? And they haven't got that purist taste that the rest of us have got. They don't know about Morotto and Barry Windsor Smith and all the rest of it. But when they see good art and when they see good stories, they'll buy it. And that's for kids as well. And so I find that particularly interesting. But that's probably me harking back to perhaps a lost age. But from my brief sampling of the newsstand, that market is still there. So it isn't just for that adult audience that comics seem to be for today. I mean, if I can get, and it has happened, if an 11 or 12-year-old kid writes in on one of my stories, I'm thinking of Spacewalk in particular, and says he likes it, that to me is like, it's really, really reaches me. It's absolutely fantastic. Because they don't know who I am. They don't know I've been in this business for a lifetime. They're just judging it on the story, and they're saying, hey, it's a good story, it's good art, I like it. And so there's no ego, there's no side to the thing. And so I find that really entrancing.
Speaking of good story and good art, can we bring it back to
Yes.
SHA? So SHA, you're doing the Kickstarter. When does it start? It's on the 8th, I think. So this Friday.
That's right. And it's for 1 month.
For 1 month. For people, like I said, I've read the first volume. Can you give a synopsis without spoiling it? Just a little bit of a taste so people know what they're getting into. Just give us don't spoil
tease,
it.
darling.
Give us a little tease.
Okay. Well, SHA is a science fantasy revenge story set in the futuristic city of New Eden. It features Inspector Duffy, Let me see if I can find an image of her. There she is, featuring Inspector Duffy, who is assigned to hunt down the sinister assassin SHA. So there's SHA on the cover. Okay. And I think I've got another image of her somewhere here as well, which I'll see if I can find. And so yeah, it's a detective story. It's a hunt, and yeah, here she is. This is some of the early versions of SHA here. Hopefully that's the right way up.
Oh,
yeah, that's nice.
Okay, so yeah, that's the one paragraph version of what SHA's all about. Yeah,
and basically
is a kind of, if you like, a dystopian version of New York. It's a fantasy version of New York.
So if you want to do this, folks, go to Kickstarter.com, type in the search bar SHA, and you will come across this. I really enjoyed this. There's so much to talk about, Pat, and I know we don't have time. So first of all, before we go on, could we have you on a second time sometime in the future? Would you come back?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now I can skip over a lot of questions and save them. Now, I know that, Vicky, you wanted to talk about some things like Slain and Nemesis.
Yeah.
But before you do, I just want to say thank you for putting Kenny Everett in TerraTube. That was a very nice cameo you put in there. I had forgotten you had done that, and I'm rereading it this week. I'm like, that's Kenny Everett. And I've been watching some of his episodes recently of the video show. Thank you. Okay, but Vicky, you had some questions specifically.
Well, yeah, with Nemesis, I really have enjoyed what I've been able to see and as of late, and I'm kind of in love with the way I love your stories because they really speak to me. And I love how you've got you've got the religious fanatic, and then you've got the opposite side of him is the demon, but you're rooting for the demon every time. And I love Nemesis and his fight against oppression. And it's, how in the world did you create this juxtaposition that is so beautiful and so, well, for me at least, it's inspiring. Where did Nemesis come from?
I think that's down to the muse. That's definitely
Your muse likes me.
No, that was the muse. I think that was a story, and the muse is always described as female, and I think that was a story she'd been waiting to get me to write. And we originally, Kevin and I, did the TerraTube that Mark's referring to with Kenny Everett. And we had regular cops, and I felt that the regular cops weren't visually interesting enough. They were just cops.
Yes.
So I said, why don't you make them, give them pointy hats, make them like the Ku Klux Klan, make them like the Spanish Inquisition.
I love the Spanish Inquisition undertones.
I didn't expect it, though. I didn't expect it at all.
And Kevin ran with that, and because obviously we're both, ex-Catholics. We both had a similar Catholic upbringing, so he just ran with that, and he came up with this. So instead of the cops having the usual sinister cop vehicle, he came up with a gondola. In other words,
I love it.
Gondola, which is a gondola. And only Kevin could come up with anything so brilliant. And whenever I look at it, I always think, if I was 9 or 10, I would love to have a toy version of that, of the gondola.
Yes, I vote yes.
Even at my advanced years, I still want one.
I'm going to tell my son to get that 3D printer moving.
There you go.
It's just brilliant. So it was the muse doing it. It was I was really being driven to do it, and it was a very subconscious process. I think the whole thing with the muse is she keeps a back seat, and you only really know about it when you're going in the wrong direction. So if, for example, yeah, I mean, seriously. So if, for example, let's say I was, I don't know, writing a football comic, which I would love to do, but I know my muse would say,
Your
no.
muse would say no.
No to that, and she would make my life very miserable. And I know this from other things because I'm actually originally a girls' comic writer. We're talking about Romeo.
Yes.
I would love to write girls' comics because they're so easy by comparison.
What is the difference? What is the difference between girl comic and boy comic back then, at least?
Well, girls' comics don't require lots of hardware, fantasy cities, and things like that. They're primarily about relationships. So you sit down and you write about relationships. It could be about someone who's very jealous. It could, and you can explore adult themes and you tone them down. So, for example, Gone Girl would probably make a very good
yes,
if it was suitably, the sexual elements were removed. And similarly, I wrote a story for Misty called Moonchild, which was very influenced by Carrie, Stephen King's Carrie. So writing those is great, but my muse said, no, that's enough. Get back to writing.
I think your muse might be my best friend. Okay, so in full disclosure, I am from a long line of military. As a matter of fact, I just said goodbye to my 21-year-old nephew who got sent to the Middle East a couple weeks ago for the next year. And at any given time, there's 2, 3, 5 of my family members deployed. And I'm a cradle Catholic. So I think that your stories just speak to my senses because I understand it. And I love it. And it's funny because some of this stuff was written when I was 9 and 10 years old. So I love your muse. Keep that muse. Don't get rid of that muse.
Keep it.
Well, I hope all your family will be safe in the year ahead.
Yeah.
Did you say five members of you?
At any given time, I can have up to 5. Right now, I only have 2.
Right.
But long line of military. I didn't join the military because I'm 4'11", and the military doesn't let anyone under 5 feet in. So that would have been a very long time ago too. I'm beyond the age limit now.
Okay. Right.
We just won't talk how many decades beyond.
I had a question, and this is it's probably only going to appeal to maybe 1 or 2 people in the audience, about credit cards, about the credits. I know that the reason British comics back in the day didn't have credits because they didn't want people poached from other companies. And I know that Kevin O'Neill started slipping in some credits into it. And as of issue 36, cover dated 29th of October, 77, the credit card became a standard in 2000 AD. But while I'm reading Charlie's War in Battle Action, I noticed that no one would have known you were writing it until the 9th of August, 1980, and then not again until October 11th. My question is, why in the same company didn't the standard go?
Right. So it was 1977 and then 1980, 3 years on.
Yes.
Right. I'm thinking back to that time. Well, I think the first thing is there was a delay because it was quite customary when you made some progress on a story and you think everything is going great and you're going off into the sunset for them to suddenly take it away from you. So when I'm serious. Yeah. So when Kevin came up with those credits, there was always the fear, right? They're gonna stamp on that very shortly. And the reason I cite that as an example is for a very brief period of time, I actually owned, and still do, own the copyright on a number of stories, because they said, yeah, you want the copyright? Yeah, you can have it. I thought, hey, this is great.
Yeah.
So I was busy typing away on various stories. And the quality of those stories, I think, comes across because I actually own the story copyright. The Terramix is the one that comes immediately to mind. It's a very well thought through story because I'm thinking, hey, I own the copyright on this. And then after, let me see, maybe 2 months, maybe 3 months, they said, "Oh, we've changed our minds. We're taking it away."
No. That's
that's how these things. This is welcome to British comics.
There was no contract signed that it was yours. I mean, was there a contract, a written contract that it was yours, or was it verbal?
We didn't really have contracts.
You didn't have. Okay.
We were everything was quite simplistic, quite brutal, and
so they could do whatever they want. Okay.
Essentially, yeah. What they had was when you got paid, you signed on the back of the check to acknowledge that they owned you.
Yes, I remember.
So I think that explains why there was a 3-year gap. But the other reason as well was because Charlie's War was successful, but I wanted to make sure. I can't remember exactly how Charlie's War may have started, let's say offhand, approximately around maybe 1979, maybe 1980. So the gap before asking for it wasn't that long. And my logic was really simple, which was make sure the story is really successful, really commercially viable, and they really need it. And then I'll ask for credits. And so that's what I did. So the gap isn't actually as wide as you might think. And whenever you getting anything out of them at that point, and this is a continuum right up to the present day, I'm afraid. The publishers today of 2000 AD aren't any different. I really wanted Charlie's War to go to another level.
Yeah.
And I said, look, if I take it into World War II, I'm going to have to talk to veterans because the truth about World War II has never been told. Which, of course, to these people, to publishers, is like, well, we don't want to tell it. And of course, to me, my muse is saying, hey, here's your chance to tell the truth here, you know? So I'm saying, look, I need a research budget. And I never specified a figure. I didn't say I wanted £1,000 an episode or anything like that. I said, but I need to talk to British veterans. I need to talk to veterans, like, you know, members of your family. And so that it's not me interpreting the facts. I want to know the underlying truth, the various things that went wrong. Not necessarily to be unpatriotic, but to tell the darkest.
To be honest.
Yeah. And because it only makes the soldiers involved more heroic. I said, look, give me a research budget and I'll carry on into World War II. Because the truth about World War II has been concealed. And so they're, of course, thinking, oh my God, you know, Pat's off on one again. So they said, no, we're not gonna do it. And I said, well, if you don't give me a research budget, I'll have to leave. And I had to leave. And I'm sad about it because even to this day, the darker truths of World War II have not been told. They've been told in World War I. Because that's just about okay. It's 100 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
That seems to be kind of this magic number.
Yeah, believe it or not, there's still censorship 100 years after the events. Can you believe that? So
absolutely can.
Yeah. So you think, how far back do we have to go? The Crimean War? Napoleonic War? Who knows? To tell the truth about those wars and to commemorate those heroes, there has been a what's called in Britain a revisionist tendency.
Yeah.
Who present World War I as a patriotic war. when in fact
It was an
it was a
awful
tragedy,
Yeah, yeah.
and the Germans have been badly treated in it, which I'm really sad about, because it's a digression, but it's rather like talking about Mo. If you see the graveyards of the Western Front, the Germans are not equal in death, and that makes me quite angry and quite sad. In other words, their graves are they're condensed, they're pushed down. So Germans don't visit their loved ones, and the German tradition is a very strong tradition of visiting the graves at, for example, this time of the year, All Saints, that kind of thing, visiting cemeteries and so on. But yeah, it is. So I wanted to cover all these kind of things, and I think I succeeded to a large extent in Charlie's War, although there still are things I'm still discovering to this day.
I think we always will.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. It's a journey, isn't it? But World War II, it's too tough. It's too tough.
I know.
They really put the lid on World War II. So, you know, a little bit now we start to acknowledge that there was a darker side to Winston Churchill. I mean, in some respects, you know, you could even argue that the darker side makes him more real and makes the good things, the things more positive. But no, they're starting to leak out the truth, and very reluctantly. It's a lot of resistance in Britain to the truth.
You see a lot of that here too, because there's a push to not talk about the fact that we didn't want to be involved in the war.
Yeah.
And you very rarely hear that talked about a lot, about how long we were xenophobic before. And I have a very interesting setup, because I had family back in Poland, because I'm only second and third generation American. So I still had family back in Poland affected by the war. And then my grandfather on my dad's side was a bomber pilot in the Pacific. So it's fascinating that we paint it, and when you look at the Hollywood movies, of course, of the time, you know, it's once we got involved, we were all in, and it was, you know, gung ho, and we're doing a good cause, but they gloss over that we went several years before we said, oh, there's a problem. And so unfortunately, we have a similar problem in the US where, you know, getting things out is it takes about 100 years or so before now we can talk about it. And it's interesting how in a graphic novel you can be, and some of the things I've read about Charlie's War really, it was phenomenal how both regular people and professional critics all seemed to really love what you were doing, especially when you were still there, and it was real, it was honest, and military people even talk about there's whole Reddit pages, by the way, on it.
I know.
Talking about how
biggest
amazing it is.
For me was seeing it in military bookshops, and on one occasion the curator of the Tank Museum in Dorset invited me down to give a talk, and I thought, well, it's actually meant to be an anti-war story. he said, well, the reason I'm the curator of this tank museum is because I read Charlie's War. And I thought, I wonder if I went a little bit wrong. But it was still very flattering. I mean, it was a wonderful thing. And can I just say, where you've just, the writer in me can smell a story there where you're talking about your Polish family.
Yes.
You know, family at war. You've got to do a graphic novel about your
muse, Vicky, your muse.
Oh God! Now the muse is coming to visit me. I have to fit it in my day job.
Because the full story of Poland, I don't need to tell you this. The full story of Poland has never really been told. You know, the complexity of Polish culture, the Catholic element, the connection with Lithuania and all that stuff, and the militarists in Poland and the two different factions. I mean, we know the broad brushstrokes, you know, Stalin coming in and wiping out the officer class, but there's so much more.
Yeah.
So You should do a story on it.
I read all the I actually had when I was a kid graphic novels of Polish fairy tales. I grew
Yeah.
up with the story of Princess Wanda who killed herself rather than marry a German prince. So
Wow. And of
yes.
course, that's another. I mean, I have so many stories that I have to say, I wish my muse would allow me to write this. And one of them I would like to write, that I don't think she'll allow me to write, is about Prussia, because Prussia has disappeared off the map.
Oh,
Prussia is
yes.
now Poland, but
Yeah.
Prussia was a completely separate entity and had an identity, which when I was growing up as a kid, there were people who didn't consider themselves to be Jewish, or they didn't consider themselves to be German. They thought of themselves as Prussian.
Yes.
And of course, the image of Prussians is that they're very militaristic and so on. But there's far more to them.
There's so much more to that,
Yeah.
to that empire. You know, oh God, that would be an amazing story. Now you're going to have to
muse
make
won't allow me to do it.
futuristic Prussian empire, and that's how your muse will allow it. It'll be futuristic. It'll have all the nitty-gritty. It will have the social commentary about what was really going on for a regular, ordinary person in the Prussian Empire. See, you can do that.
It's a very rich culture. I mean,
it is.
There's so many. Yeah, we better go down that rabbit hole.
All right.
We'll never escape.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's pull back out of the rabbit hole.
And going away from the rabbit hole, we're running out of time. Yes. We're definitely going to have you back because we didn't talk about what's behind me, Doctor Who. We'll talk about that maybe next time.
Oh.
We'll talk about editing, action, and 2000 AD, Dice Man. We'll talk all about that next time if that's all right with you.
That would be great.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's now talk again about SHA.
Okay.
So it's coming up this Friday, the November the 8th to December the 8th. You can go to Kickstarter.com, type in SHA, get there, or a link on social media. I know 77 Publishing puts up links on theirs, right, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely.
Links,
I think the other thing I would say that I think is probably is definitely worth including is for fans who are missing the golden age of 2000 AD. Who they will find in SHA very similar elements. For example, futuristic death games, beautifully designed hardware, which I've shown you some examples of, crazy robots. And I think there we are. That's the equivalent of Torquemada. That's demented space missionaries who want to convert the galaxy. So all those elements. I mean, when I was writing it, it was very shortly after the Golden Age, and so I think that. Those aspects are worth bearing in mind on SHA, that it's going to take the reader back to that golden age of 2000 AD. And in fact, the story was originally inspired by my Slane saga, because I came across this particular character, which I never used in Slane, called Scortha. And she was this female warrior who was going to teach Slane, and certainly taught Cuchulainn, who was the basis for Slane, martial arts. And I thought, well, if this woman she's really the ultimate warrior, because Cuchulainn is this complete maniac, and he was taught by Scortha. And so SHA evolved from Scortha. And went through various versions before I ended up with the one that we did. So I think that's one aspect of it. And then another thing that's worth bearing in mind is I think for British and American readers. This is an opportunity to get hold of a print edition of Olivia's work, because normally with Requiem for example.
Mm-hmm.
It's available as a digital edition. Millsverse, myself, we publish a digital edition, but we don't have a paper edition. And there isn't a paper edition at this point in time. So anyone who says, "Oh, I don't want digital," and there's a lot of you out there,
Yeah.
say, "No, I'll wait for the paper version." is what everyone says. So, if you want to get your hands on some Olivier Ledroit artwork, if you want to see what that actually looks like, and as I say, the format we'll be going for, it'll be about this shape and size. SHA is for the foreseeable future. SHA is about the only opportunity if you're not French. So it's really is a must, I think, from that point of view, to go for it. As I say, I mean, Olivier is well, you can see from his art that, I mean, he's a hugely successful, and I think one of the things that I particularly love about his work, he really appeals to popular culture. Now, a lot of French are a little, what should we say, a bit conservative, old school. And so some of them don't actually, he's going a little, what they would see as down market. And what I think all of us here would see as being aiming at popular culture. The reader in the street, the kid in the street, he wants to reach that audience, and he does it with beautiful art. And so that's why, I mean, in so many respects, his work actually almost has a British feeling. And I should add that the various things I've mentioned, like the crazy robots, the crazy city, the fantasy feeling, most of those ideas were Olivier's. I wrote the story as a straight drama. And so he would say, "Oh, let's have a cyber sex villain here, and let's have these airships that I think I showed you earlier." I mean, they were actually Olivier's ideas, and yet to look at them, you think, "Oh, that looks like a typical Pat Mills idea." No, it's actually Olivier's. So you can imagine how well we get onto to this day. It's
I love it.
Very rewarding relationship, and I like to think that it will encourage other artists in Britain and in the US to go down that road, hopefully in a positive way. Because if you think back to Slaying the Horned God, when Bisley's Horned God appeared, my God, it changed the artist's direction, didn't it? You had all these artists who suddenly thought, right, I'm going to do fully painted art, and I'm going to draw or paint like Simon Bisley. And some of them got it right, and some of them did a beautiful job. But there was also a number where it sort of fell by the wayside, shall we say. They were rather dismal. So I like to think that when this Anglo-American audience sees this SHA, that it might have a Horned God effect. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. Folks, we're basically out of time. Thank you, Pat. But before we go, first of all, if you're watching this on YouTube, please go down there and subscribe, hit like at 77 Publications. Ben, can you do your housekeeping right now?
Sure. To find our publications, simply go to the77comic.net. Also in the description of this will be the link for the Kickstarter running until the 8th of December. And if you're around Friday night, exclusively, Pat will be there on a live show. We're doing a launch event with Pat. Not sure, Pat, is Lisa on board as well, or is she going to be just...
She's much more camera shy than me.
Okay. Well, Mark and Vicky will be there as well.
No, unfortunately, Unfortunately, I'll
Okay.
be on a cruise ship in the Bahamas, so I'm going
I
to
might
miss
be able
that.
to
That's
make it
no
work.
excuse. That is
Yeah.
no
Wow.
excuse. I'm sure
I,
you've
I,
got
I'll figure I'll figure something out. I'll figure something
Wi-Fi.
out.
Send me the
Yeah.
link, Ben.
I think myself and Pat will give you a waiver on that one. That's fine. A
Okay,
cruise ship around the Bahamas is fine. I don't have
thank
such
you.
a thing lined up. So yeah, Pat's going to be chatting with us again, running through some of the rewards again. He'll be able to field a couple of questions. So if you've got something, you're basically going to be able to message us there. The link for that is going to be here, but also go to the 77 Publishing Facebook group, and we're running an event. So that's going to be just prior to the start of the Kickstarter. We give you half an hour's kind of loo to see what's going on, a bit of a sneak peek, if you like. And then the Kickstarter itself starts sharp at 8:30.
Ooh. 8:30.
So
What
if I want that
GMT.
calendar,
GMT. So we're talking, and since tonight, when we're recording it tonight, our clocks change. So we're back to the 5 hour from where I'm in. Okay. Excellent. Let me do my housekeeping, folks. If you like science fiction, if you like interviews, if you like comic books and stuff, go to MarkWHO42.com. We have a show called MarkWHO42. It's been around since 2012. It used to be a Doctor Who show. Now it's general science fiction. Also, if you want to hear our old shows with over 150 interviews with people from Star Trek, Doctor Who, Babylon 5, Tron, if you're interested in that, go to our YouTube channel, Mark Who 42's Universe, youtube.com/at Mark Who 42. And there's a playlist called Classic Episodes, and they're all there. You'll have a great time there. All right. I think that's my housekeeping. Pat, do you have anything you want to tell anyone, before we go?
Well, just potential thanks to everyone who will hopefully support the Kickstarter. Thank you so much for doing it. It's our first Kickstarter, so we're quite nervous about it. So,
it's going to be just
Um,
fine.
It's gonna be
I
fine. It's
predict
gonna be
it.
good. It's gonna be good. You're gonna do the
thank you
roof.
in advance for that, and thanks to everybody I'm meeting here today, especially you, Vicky. You're talking about
Oh,
your family and in the Middle East and your Polish background. And I'm thinking, wow, there's
yeah,
a
you got to
great
watch it. I can
story
talk
in that.
forever.
Now, you got to watch the older episodes to find out about me. I'm not. I just thought it wasn't bearing repeating.
Well,
And I,
we've all got great stories behind
yeah,
Yes.
us.
oh,
I think
oh
that's
my
the thing.
God, yes. And maybe we'll discuss it when we have you back. We're definitely going to have
That's,
Pat back in the
sounds
future.
sounds great.
Uh,
And thanks so much, Ben, for facilitating this and making it happen
Pleasure,
and
Pat. Pleasure,
all right.
Pat.
explaining the complexities of Kickstarter to someone like me who's long given up the. Fortunately, I have Lisa to hold my hand and explain that that's a good financial idea and that's a bad financial idea. So that's. But thank you so much, Ben, for making that happen. Thank you.
My honor. Absolute honor.
All right. So on behalf of myself, Mark Baumgarten, and Vicky Jakubowski, Ben Cullis, and our guest Pat Mills, you've been watching Mark Who 77. We'll see you next time where we'll have another great interview. And coming up soon, I don't know how soon, but soon we'll have Pat back. We'll talk about Doctor Who and the magazines and comic magazines that he edited. So until then, bye everyone.